I will now move on and invite Ms. Professor Tonia Moropoulou to take the floor for the next panel discussion. Unfortunately, our moderator, Mr. Vasilis Adonis Karagiannakis, will not be here because he is away with COVID. Yeah. So, Professor Moropoulou will be moderating this panel discussion. Professor?
Thank you, Mr. Moutsios. Concerning shipping towards energy and technology transformation, shipping industry is undergoing transformation driven by the need for energy efficiency and technological advancement. This is leading to adoptive innovative practices concerning alternative fuels, digital solutions, in order the sector to reduce the carbon footprint and enhance operational efficiency. This transition not only addresses environmental concerns, but also positions the industry as a key player in the global movement for sustainability. Of course, it's under the leadership of women. You know very well that in Greece, women are governing the shipping enterprises, and this is a fact. Furthermore, the greening of this marine industry justifies the inclusion of traditional shipyards, and that's the reason for the WEF Athens call to save traditional shipyards. I have the honor to invite the Deputy Minister of Environment and Energy, my friend, Mrs. Alexandra Sdoukou, to take the floor as a keynote speaker in this panel. And will you please join us at the panel?
Let me see the faces of the women and men in this room. Thank you very much, Ms. Moropoulou, for inviting me. I hope the cameras on the roads didn't pick up the speed with which we were riding the motorbike to be here, but I really wanted to be here and honor, actually, all women in this room who, from each of you, actually, from your positions, I'm sure you're doing a great job. I'm also a woman who is working in a man's world, the energy sector. Usually, I'm surrounded by men in the energy sector. But I think with all these ups and downs, with positive energy, with frustration many times. How did you say before? We just need the respect, right? Okay. Respect, that's all. And from our side, I think what we want to give is the best of ourselves. So when we give the best of ourselves, we are satisfied. And I was actually, how do they say when, if you want something done right, ask a woman, right? Or, and if you want something to happen, I don't know, quickly, what they usually say is ask a room full of them, full of women. So I'm sure that with many inspiring women in this room, I'm sure you had something really nice since this morning. When did you start? This morning. Okay. And I'm sure you had very insightful conversation. And on a more serious note, I think that this forum shows as an important reality, and I'm sure you touched this issue. Women are taking on more leadership roles in all kinds of fields. And these, let me say, I have the feeling that this didn't happen overnight. It is thanks to many talented women in key roles and their supporters who broke down barriers and opened also doors for others. The truth is that gender-balanced leadership isn't just good for women. I think it leads to better decisions for everyone. And we shouldn't actually need policies like gender quotas to remind us that women deserve a seat on the table. Women should be there based on their skills, on talent, with no barriers holding them back. And why women's leadership is crucial. It's not just, I would say, in government and business, but also in traditionally male-dominated industries like shipping, since we're discussing here about shipping. So in these industries, I think that both decisions are needed to achieve the transformation we will discuss today. Now, having set the stage, let me shift to the main topic, which is the transformation currently taking place in the shipping industry. And here from my side, as Ministry of Environment and Energy, I think that this path to what we call green transition is a major challenge for the shipping sector. Why is that? Because it's challenging and it's costly, this green transition in the shipping sector. Shipping, as you know better than me, those who work in this sector, is one of the hardest sectors to decarbonize. It will require around 40 billion annually from 2031 to 2050 if we want to scale up infrastructure on clean fuels and technologies for the industry globally. With ships, most running on fossil fuels and also made of steel, this transformation requires significant changes. So at the moment, what do we have? We have the shipping sector, which is responsible for about 3% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. And I was trying to understand what is this 3%. So if shipping were a country, it would be the 6th largest emitter, ahead of countries like Brazil and France. And I think that's how I realized what does this mean. So as global trade grows, if we don't act, emissions could rise between 50% to 250% by 2050. And this is why I think improving energy efficiency and also adopting cleaner fuels, it's not just an option, but it is a necessity. Here, the good news is that the IMO, the International Maritime Organization, it has set ambitious goals. So we have new targets, which include a 20% reductions in emissions by 2030. This is compared to 2008 levels, and also a 70% reduction by 2040. again, compared to 2008. And the ultimate goal, of course, is to achieve these net zero emissions by 2050. Where we stand today, we've seen, I would say, some positive steps. So the shipping industry, I think it has been actively working on initiatives on how to reduce carbon footprint and how to move towards decarbonization. For example, methanol has become a leading alternative fuel, which is driven largely by container ship orders, with other sectors as well, like bulk carriers and car carriers also adopting it. Actually, methanol has surpassed LNG as the most popular alternative fuel for new ship orders. And this, for me, highlights the potential in the decarbonization of shipping. What do we also have? We have the European Union, which is stepping up, and that's important because it gives the signal, the guidance. We have the Fuel EU Maritime Regulation, which is part of the broader, as you know, Fit for 55 package, which starts in 2025, and this will push shipping industry to adopt cleaner energy solutions. In parallel, as you know, we have ETS, which now includes also ships that use European Union ports, so forcing companies to embrace greener technologies and also creating further financial incentives for decarbonization. And we are also seeing new opportunities. Take, for example, European Union grants that are available actually today to help the shipping industry to adopt greener practices. And I think that's very good from the side of the European Commission to encourage industries to follow environmental regulations. And what is also important for me to note is, I don't know, I read this somewhere in a global maritime forum. This shift to zero-emission fuels in shipping could create to 4 million new jobs by 2050 in renewable energy, in hydrogen production, in e-fuels. And that's also, I think, a very important data. But of course, these opportunities, obviously, they come with challenges. So what do we need? We need a clear science-based roadmap in order to guide investments and also to speed up the production of clean fuels. That's not an easy task. The second challenge is how to make the alternative fuels to become competitive, because at the end of the day, money also is an important factor. When you have a fuel that is not still competitive, despite the appetite, despite the desire, it cannot come as quickly as we wish. So I think here a global carbon pricing system, I think it's crucial if we want to close the cost gap between fossil fuels and cleaner alternatives. And third, I think it's the governments and the industries that need to work together more closely in order to innovate and in order to build the necessary infrastructure for these new fuels. So adding to these, what we also face as a challenge is all these geopolitical challenges that obviously affect the competitiveness of European economies. We had the pandemic, we had the Russian war, we had the attacks on shipping in the Red Sea. So I think all these have intensified the pressures on the shipping industry. And when you have also in your mind all these pressures, and at the same time also the need to decarbonize this sector, that's not easy to handle it. But allow me here also to say that despite these global challenges, where Greece stands in this broad picture, I think Greece as a leader in shipping, it has a key role to play. Our country is actually leadership in the maritime sector position and can help if we want to shape this sustainable shipping. In Greece, if I can very briefly describe to you what we have set in our National Energy and Climate Plan, the NECP, which is the roadmap we have set at the Ministry of Environment, the goals to decarbonize the maritime sector. What we have there in this NECP document, first, regarding the reduction of CO2 emissions, we aim to gradually shift to low or zero carbon fuels like hydrogen, like biofuels, bio-LNG, also synthetic fuels like methanol, synthetic LNG, and ammonia. So we start working on this direction. It's premature, but we must have a clear roadmap as Greece of where we want to go. Second, with regards to green infrastructure, what we do is that we are trying to invest in ports and shipping infrastructure to support cleaner energy technologies. And finally, Greece is also aligning with European policies. So Greece is committed to following these European Union's fuel maritime regulation and also the EU trading emissions trading system to lower emissions from maritime transport. Part of our strategy includes also the development of shore-side electricity, SSE, as part of this Fit for 55 plan. So by 2030, cruise ships, passenger ships, and container ships in our ports, they will be required to use electricity from shore while docked. And these fuel maritime regulation applies actually to all ships over 5,000 gross tonnage that are calling at European ports, regardless of their flag. I think the port of Piraeus is actually now working on implementing cold ironing, which allows ships to turn off their engines and use electricity while docked. Also, recently, there were another 10 million euros approved for another 4 ports, Rafina, Lavrio, Corfu, and Kavala, to support this infrastructure. And our target is by 2029 to have 12 ports in Greece to have this capability. And what we have also done is that we have secured, and I'm finishing with that, 360 million from European Union Transport Sector Program to convert ships into green vessels. of course, as a public and private partnership. I think more or less the competent Ministry of Maritime, also the Ministry of Environment and Energy, we are all trying to do our best to find resources, to find funding, to orientate this sector into becoming greener. So I think that our goal is to transition into a new era with modern, safe, and environmentally friendly ships. I think this is our vision, all of us. Let me congratulate you, because I think I spoke a lot for this, hosting this important forum, and highlighting the shipping industry transition to cleaner fuels, which again, yes, we have to admit it's challenging, but it is a necessary step to reduce emissions and also secure a sustainable future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Deputy Minister of Environment and Energy. It was a great honor and pleasure to hear you, to announce your policies, your strategies, your measures. I hope you will find very interesting the positions of the other panelists, and that there will be a synthesis after all.
She's a woman I admire for her energy.
Thank you. So I would please invite all the members of the panel to take their post here. Please, Mrs. Rissaki, Mrs. Tsurva, Mr. Vasiliadis. Okay, let's be all together, no reason to go aside. Mrs. Aphrodite Xidi. Okay. We will start with Faisalimi Kremli. She is Deputy Director of the Circular Economy and Climate Institute of the EPLO, and she is representative of the United Nations Environmental Council in Europe concerning the ISPU Convention and the Sea Protocol. Faye, you are having the floor.
Στο κοινό. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank you, the organizing committee, and Professor Tonia Moropoulou in particular, who invite me to speak in this amazing forum. My presentation is about green circular shipping in the era of climate crisis, and I'm going to analyze mostly the international and European legal frameworks and policies. Shipping serves more than 80% of the world's trade, so it's the backbone of the global trade. It's a cost-effective way of transportation, and of course there are technological advancements. Shipping enhances safety, efficiency, and environmental sustainability. But why is carbon footprint reduction a major concern for the shipping industry? I think that the Minister already answered this question. This is why shipping is producing almost 30% of the global greenhouse gas emissions, almost the annual greenhouse emissions of a country like Japan. In 2018, the IMO has committed to cutting greenhouse gas emissions, but at least half by 2050, in order to comply with the Paris Climate Agreement's 1.5 Celsius degrees global heating target. So now we are talking about the international framework. IMO is responsible about it. IMO's objective can be summarized as follows: safe, secure, and efficient shipping in clean oceans. The fundamental purpose of IMO is rooted in the conservation and sustainable use of oceans and their resources, which is most related to the Sustainable Development Goal 14, life below water. The main conventions and regulations adopted by IMO actively address directly the marine pollution. This is the MARPOL Convention, the London Convention and Protocol, the UNCLOS Convention. What are the IMO's priorities from the environmental perspective? First of all, monitoring and improving ships' energy efficiency. Then tightening regulations about the minimum fuel efficiency needed per mile covered. This is the most important issue. Also, the use of alternative green fuels. Scientists have predicted that if zero-emission fuels cover 5% of the environmental shipping fuel mix by 2030, the industry will be on track to decarbonize by 2050, and also optimization of fuel consumption. A key decision of IMO is being expected in spring of 2025. It concerns an international emissions levy for shipping that will minimize the importance of European emissions trading system. Now we're going to the European legal framework. First of all, we have the European Green Deal, of course, that aims to zero emissions of greenhouse gases by 2050. Key pillars to succeed are green energy and circular economy. Green fuels alone will not make shipping sustainable. With circular economy, the process of building a new fleet of zero-carbon vessels can be optimized to minimize waste and secure a circular flow of valuable resources. This can mean resource efficiency and cost savings, as well as reduce environmental impact and improve social working conditions under ESG patterns. By rethinking current ship design and operational models, new circular economy business models can present opportunities to increase revenue, reduce costs, and improve risk management. The EU emission trading system, called ETS, has been extended to maritime transport emissions from all large ships. This is cargo, passenger, and offshore ships that entering the EU ports regardless of the fly they flag since January 1st of 2024. The system covers 50% of emissions from voyages starting or heading outside of the EU and 100% of emissions that occur between the EU ports and when the ships are within EU ports. What are the key provisions? First of all, we have phased implementation. The share of emissions that must be covered by allowances gradually increases each year, starting from 2025 and ending 2027 and beyond. We have monitoring and reporting. Every year, companies must submit an emissions report for each of the ships under their responsibility. And of course, they must comply with the MRV Maritime System of Emissions. Shipping companies must surrender their first ETS allowances by 30 September of 2025 for emissions reported in 2024. Shipping companies that fail to surrender the allowances are liable to penalties and fees. But what are the impacts on shipping industry? First of all, we have a negative impact. This is that ETS increases costs. Purchasing allowances adds operational costs. And the positive impact is that encourages adoption of low-carbon solutions like LNG, electric vessels, and energy efficiency measures. This is a very interesting diagram of the previous ETS regulation. Will companies have to surrender allowances for emission from biofuels or other alternative fuels? The Renewable Energy Directive has a CO2 emission factor of 0 under the ETS. The EU taxonomy is a way for green financing. In Article 9 sets out a number of environmental objectives, so an economic activity must meet at least one of those in order to qualify it as environmentally sustainable. So in this article describe the eligible types of ships for green financing. We have low emission and zero emission vessels, energy efficiency upgrade for existing vessels, and also passenger and cargo vessels if meeting emission reduction criteria. EU taxonomy also supports infrastructure, shoreside electricity for ships to use electric power at port, alternative fuel bunkering facilities, and also we have key eligibility criteria. These are emission thresholds, climate resilience, pollution reduction, and ship recycling. A very important role have also the green ports. This is why green ports shift to sustainable shipping practices, reduces operational emissions, lower operational costs, ensure regulatory compliance, enhanced competitiveness, and also promote innovation and collaboration. I try to be brief. My presentation is in your disposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Faye. It seems there is a convergence between planning at the United Nations and environmental strategies and the national strategy that the Deputy Minister presented. Of course, what is opened is what practically will happen, and that's a question to discuss. And absolutely, not only implementation, but the response of the private sector and the competitiveness to be presented, because there are coming huge waves of new technologies, especially on the ground of hydrogen production by garbage, plastics, etc. And that means we cannot talk right now about common pricing, but we are speaking of featuring the future and handling it. It's a pleasure to refer to Ioannina Guta, a chemical engineer. She is the Director General of Fuel Europe and Concave. She is traveling in Europe right now, but we will follow her in her presentation, which is a video to see. Please.
Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed panelists, I would like to thank the Women Economic Forum for this invitation to participate in the event and join this panel on shipping. It is an honor and pleasure, and I regret that commitments here in Brussels didn't allow me to travel to Greece to attend the event in person. Fuels Europe represents the European fuel manufacturers, 40 members covering 95% of the fuels production capacity in the EU, the UK, Switzerland, and Norway, producing both conventional and renewable fuels, as well as industrial feedstocks and products. Our sector, at the heart of the economic and social development of modern societies, is a strategic sector for Europe's energy supply and security for mobility and industry. But today, the prevailing question about this strategic sector is what its future will be on the journey towards a climate-neutral future. The maritime sector, one of the key sectors for our industry, is embracing the same journey. It is now regulated under the FuelEU maritime legislation, which sets clear and ambitious emission reductions objectives for the sector and will also undergo a profound transformation. Our respective sectors have to transform and contribute to the EU's climate neutrality objective by 2050. I see complementarities between us, where maritime needs to improve energy efficiency with a new generation of engines and ship design solutions, innovative operation management, alternative fuels, and digital solutions. Our industry has to change many things, from technologies and processes, products and feedstocks, adopt new business models, and create new value chains. The transformation has to happen in the smoothest possible way to ensure the competitiveness of both our sectors, ensure continued critical development of the EU maritime sector in international trade, but also as a key industry for Greece and our sector to continue supplying affordable fuels and products to transport and industry, eventually making Greece a regional renewable fuels hub with advanced biofuels, green hydrogen, e-fuels for the maritime industry, and many other sectors. We will work hand in hand, and to that extent, the very recent launch of the Clean Maritime Fuels Platform uniting European Community Ship Owners Association, Hydrogen Europe, Methanol Institute, E-Fuel Alliance, and Fuels Europe is a great step towards this close collaboration between our respective sectors. The platform will explore the opportunities and challenges of the production, supply, and use of renewable and low-carbon maritime fuels. This collaboration will help both our industries to be at the forefront in contributing to the Fit for 55 and Green Deal objectives while continuing to thrive in the global marketplace. Yet, more has to be done to trigger and enable our robust transformation. Industries need enabling conditions, and unfortunately we have to stress that absence of a true EU industrial strategy, which will likely have an impact on the competitiveness of European industry. In addition, a number of new challenges which had been completely overlooked in the beginning arose at the end of the previous legislative cycle. Challenge of security of supply of energy and critical raw materials, loss of competitiveness of EU businesses versus US and China, and risk of deindustrialization with unforeseen socio-economic impact, increasing cost of energy for European citizens and businesses, alarming signals from the car industry, and growing social risks. To address all these challenges and deliver the climate targets, the EU realized that it needs to foster the development of new technologies and stimulate the production of green products in Europe. Competitiveness and the new Clean Industrial Deal, complementing and supporting the Green Deal targets, will be key success factors. Coming to our sector, our strategic manufacturing assets across Europe and our extensive storage and supply infrastructure, supplying fuels to all European ports, needs first to remain competitive and then be able to transform, given the right enabling conditions. The EU's climate neutrality ambition cannot be achieved without renewable liquid fuels. These liquid fuels should preferably be produced domestically to enhance energy security, resilience, autonomy, and secure a competitive economy. International competitiveness for shipping and EU strategic industrial sectors such as fuels manufacturing should be acknowledged in order to ensure a level playing field, sustain the attractiveness of the EU's economy, and prevent carbon leakage. We acknowledge the regulatory support of the development and deployment of sustainable maritime fuels by setting targets in the FuelEU Maritime. But we also see substantial opportunities for improvement. An integrated approach for the ramp-up of fuels production and their use in transport is critical. Renewable fuels used not only in maritime but in various transport sectors will create synergies and not competition. We should not forget that the bigger the market size, the bigger the investor's interest and the stronger the business case. And also, the production at scale of renewable fuels for all transport modes will allow a faster reduction of the cost of the fuels, which will be beneficial for the maritime sector. But, as I said, for the scale-up of renewable fuels production, the EU has to create strong business cases and lead markets, which currently are not in place. Our strategic document, more than a manifesto, is our offer for Europe in the next decades and describes how this can be done. Our sector has an attractive offer for Europe, fully aligned and supportive to the strategic priorities of the EU, providing solutions where other technologies stop, even for hard-to-abate sectors such as the maritime. We offer solutions to decarbonize all transport modes, as well as other strategic industrial sectors, and we ask for a holistic approach and an EU-wide strategy for the transition of liquid fuels. This is the missing piece of the EU climate neutrality puzzle. We need such comprehensive strategy as part of the regulatory blueprint of the new institutional cycle in order to identify the enabling conditions to unlock investments in renewable fuels, set the requirements for a suitable regulatory framework, and protect the international competitiveness of the industry. In this journey, cooperation and synergies between the fuels industry and the maritime sector, as well as across the entire value chain, and of course, cooperation with the new institutions and policymakers will certainly be crucial in the new institutional cycle in order to develop the most cost-effective sustainable energy solutions for vessels, to support the scale-up of renewable fuel productions and thereby reduce fuels costs for ship operators, ensure security of supply by making the fuels available throughout the main ports, not only in the long term but in the transitional period as well, and achieve global regulations applicable for all operators under the IMO umbrella. I will conclude by thanking the Women Economic Forum for inviting me to join this panel. I unfortunately will not be able to take questions from the audience, but I would be very happy to continue this discussion at a later occasion.
You can see that Greek women are taking initiatives, and they are at the first steps of being competitive in Europe as well. I will invite Dora Tsurva, who is a teaching and research assistant in the School of Naval Architecture and Engineering, Marine Engineering, at the National Technical University of Athens, member of the International Ship Structure Committee, and a great woman. Dora, you are having the floor.
So, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished Professor Moropoulou, distinguished Professor Chrysoulakis, Honorable Deputy Minister, Mrs. Sdoukou, it is a great privilege to address you today at the Women Economic Forum, a platform that not only celebrates the achievements of women, but also empowers us to drive innovation and change. Let me take this opportunity to share with you my insights on the shipping industry, particularly in the areas of energy and technology, throughout the perspective of a woman working in research at the School of Naval Architecture and Marine Engineering at the National Technical University of Athens. Later on, I can take questions about how is the women and the female student in our school. For now, I will talk to you about the shipping towards energy and technological transformation. Well, in the heart of an era of technological exploration, the maritime industry is steering towards the future of net zero emissions. The journey is far-reaching and costly, but the destination is clear: a maritime world powered by carbon-neutral fuels and innovative technologies by 2050. Spurred by a wave of decarbonization regulations, shipping is in a phase of unprecedented innovation, with a wide range of new technologies being developed, tested, and implemented. Shipping regulations are coming, and they will impose a cost on emissions impacting the asset values of existing ships. In the EU, 2024 is the first year when ships are subject to the EU Emissions Trading System, ETS, and coming soon, in 2025, the Fuel EU Maritime will impose a well-to-wake requirement on energy use during a year, effectively forcing the use of qualified low greenhouse gas fuels. Globally, the IMO is working on implementing its greenhouse gas strategy, and new regulations are to be adopted in 2025 and to enter into force in mid-2027. The ongoing negotiations in the IMO are developing what is called a basket of measures, comprising of two parts: a technical element, which will be a mandate on reduced greenhouse gas fuel intensity, and an economic element, which will be a greenhouse gas emissions pricing mechanism. The decarbonization of shipping will also require a transition to carbon-neutral fuels, and hence construction of vessels that can run on these fuels. The trend for larger ships being ordered with dual-fuel propulsion capabilities is continuing. This does not apply just for the LNG, but many methanol and LPG fueled ships are in the order book, while first orders for ammonia fueled vessels, despite the low maturity of this technology, is monitored. You can see the numbers in the presentation. You can see how we have a rise in the number of the new technology ships. Increasing global carbon-neutral fuel production is necessary to reach the IMO's ambition of a 20% reduction in total CO2 emissions from shipping by 2030 relative to 2008 levels. It is estimated that 44 to 63 million tons of oil equivalent of carbon-neutral fuels will be available by 2030 for all economic sectors, and that shipping will need 10 to 100% of these fuels. So, with limited availability of carbon-neutral fuels and a slow transition to alternative fuel fleets, energy efficiency technologies offer a cost-effective and predictable path to emissions reduction. The global fleet must tackle energy losses, as only half of the fuel energy is converted into shaft power and only a third generates propulsion thrust. By implementing available technologies for both new builds and retrofits, the fleet can achieve 16% fuel consumption reduction, saving over 40 million tons of fuel and 120 million tons of CO2 annually. This is equivalent to operating 55,000 smaller ships or 2,500 larger ships on carbon-neutral fuels. Such technical and operational energy efficiency measures are supported by advances in digital technologies and systems. Digitalization brings essential transparency to vessel performance, providing critical data to assess the effectiveness of energy-saving measures. Connecting ships to the internet and onshore operating centers can be used for decision support and efficiency improvements of ships, and this data-driven approach is key to designing and operating the next generation of energy-efficient ships. Onboard carbon capture and storage can significantly reduce shipping emissions, becoming thus a highly cost-effective decarbonization solution for shipping. But CO2 requires high handling and storage infrastructure. Shipping's carbon storage demand in 2030 is estimated at 4 to 76 metric tons of CO2 compared to a projected global capacity of 47 to 67 metric tons. Major ports like Singapore and Rotterdam could benefit from CCS infrastructure. The largest announced CO2 storage projects, though, with capacities of 7.5 to 20 metric tons of CO2 per year, could be adapted to support shipping decarbonization. Developing CO2 infrastructure at major ports could create green corridors for CCS, and revenue could help fund these advancements. Emission reduction can also be obtained through using shore power. Up to 7% of the total energy consumption of ships could be covered this way while they are in port if shore power capacity was sufficient and all ships had shore power capability. The well-to-wake emissions from producing electricity from onboard diesel generators are higher than the average greenhouse gas intensity from the grid in many countries. Further emission reductions could also come from short shipping electrification through plug-in hybrids, which is a great opportunity for Greece. The potential for shore power has been recognized, and the Fuel EU Maritime is mandating its use in major ports from 2030 for passenger ships and container vessels above 5,000 gross tons. DNV simulations estimate that operational and technical energy efficiency measures could reduce shipping fuel consumption by 4 to 16% in 2030 compared to a business-as-usual scenario. The estimated demand for carbon-neutral fuels is between 7 and 48 million tons, while demand for CO2 storage from onboard carbon capture ranges from 4 to 76 metric tons of CO2. However, the energy transition will inevitably come at a cost. Overall, the new technologies and alternative fuels increase cost of seaborne transport. The cost of bulk transport will increase by over 70%, for tankers around 80%, and will be double for transporting goods in containers. There's a lot of talk these days about a slowing energy transition, like slow EV sales and failed wind projects in some regions. However, the global shift towards renewable energy remains on track. Solar, wind, and battery technologies are experiencing rapid cost reduction and exponential uptake. These are key developments for the shipping industry, which will need to collaborate with land-based sectors to access carbon-neutral fuels. While making electricity green is advancing, the hard-to-electrify sectors face greater challenges, with hydrogen-derived fuels and biofuels remaining costly and dependent on strong policy backing. The shipping industry is indeed facing ongoing uncertainty as it navigates towards decarbonization. But inaction is not an option. The urgency of improving energy efficiency continues to grow, along with the importance of optimizing operations through digitalization and data-driven decision-making. The shipping industry has a proven track record of bold and decisive action based on scientific evidence, and I remain confident that it will rise to the challenge of decarbonization with the same boldness and in a spirit of collaboration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We can keep notes that alternative fuels require new ships. Before our Deputy Minister leaves, I would like to give you the award of WEF. Yes, yes, please. I have the pleasure now to invite Mrs. Aphrodite Xidi, Executive Director of Down Policy Institute.
Firstly, thank you very much for the invite, and thank you for having me, and thank you to Mr. Chrysoulakis for the personal invite. Before I begin, I've been listening to all of these women today, and I'd like to share a little bit of a personal story. I currently live in the US. Before, I lived in the Middle East, so I lived in Dubai, I worked in Saudi Arabia, Oman, Qatar, Kuwait, very different environment for women. And I remember in my company, I was doing consulting, there were no women at the top. And eventually, one of the women made it, and she made it to partner, and all of us were asking, like, how did you do it? How did you make it? And she turned around and she said, I didn't have any role models. I had no one to look up to. I had to be the role model for myself. And I think I see a lot of these women here today, and I just want to thank you all on behalf of all of the women that follow on your footsteps for being bold and being unafraid and doing something that no one else has done before. And I think it really sets the path for women like me who come later, and someone else has done the difficult part of changing the landscape, which is also why I think these events are very important. Moving to the topic of the conversation, I think you mentioned that there's a lot of women in shipping. I have a little of a fact here that Greek women in shipping own 510 ships, which is very impressive. And they have a lot of influence in Greek shipping and shipping overall. But specifically, I think, if we think about the maritime industry, it's going through a massive transformation on two fronts. The one front being digitization and the other front being the decarbonization end. And because Greece owns 20% of the global fleet, this presents an amazing opportunity for the country. And just for context, 20% of the global fleet comes to a country that has 0.13% of the world's population and 0.24% of the world's GDP. So we really have an outsized impact in this sector, and this gives us a massive opportunity as a country to create some sort of competitive advantage and be able to see the impact transform in our economy as well. And I'd like to focus on three topics on that front. The first one is how do we drive research and development and entrepreneurship in decarbonization. The second one has to do with bunkering. And the third one, which is a technology we haven't touched upon today, which is nuclear power in shipping. I'll start with the first one. I think we heard the statistics. 3% of global emissions are because of shipping. If Greece owns 20% of the global fleet, that's around 0.6% of the world's emissions. And for contrast, Greece as a country as a whole produces 0.2% of global emissions. So if we want to nationally decarbonize, it's much more important for us as a nation, not as a country, to decarbonize shipping than the country itself. In parallel, I think the minister mentioned this as well, decarbonizing shipping will require somewhere between 1.2 to 1.6 trillion. That's, I think, approximately $40 billion per year between 2030 and between 2050. Maersk alone, which is one of the biggest shipping companies in the world, is going to be investing $1 billion over the next decade to decarbonize. So the way I hear this is that there's a lot of opportunity to bring investment into the country. Why? Because Greek shipping is obviously 20% of the fleet, but they also have $40 billion of revenue every year. For comparison, the Greek GDP is around 240 billion in revenue. So this is a lot of money that Greek shipping creates. It's not all local, but on average, shipping companies spend 1%, or 1 to 3%, but let's say 1% of their revenues in R&D. That's $400 million a year. 10% of that is $40 million a year. This is $40 million that could be coming into the country into R&D. Of course, this cannot be done alone, right? It can't only be done by the private sector. There's a lot of funds, as I think a few people have already mentioned, being given by Horizon Europe. So I think I'm just pitching this idea, and I know it's a bold and innovative idea, but this is, I think, why we're here, of why don't we have a local R&D center that focuses on maritime technology, be it decarbonization, be it digitization, whatever it may be. I think it could have a massive impact, not only in shipping globally, but also in our local economy. And we have, amazing students, and the professors on this panel can testify to that. We have amazing students. We have an entrepreneurship ecosystem that is booming in the country. And we also have shipyards that are getting hundreds of millions of dollars of investment that could potentially eventually become even bigger shipyards. And then if you have the local technology as well, I think that there is a very interesting argument to be made here. Again, I know it's an idea that's outside of the box, but this is why we're here. The second topic that I'd like to touch on has to do with bunkering. We heard a little bit about the composition of the new fleet coming on board. I have some numbers by tonnage in terms of the orders being made. So 30% of ships in 2023, ordered ships were LNG, 5 to 10% were methanol, less than 5% ammonia, 20 to 25% dual fuel, 3% hydrogen, and still 30 to 35 are still conventional. But what this means is that we also need to be producing all of this fuel globally, right? And I think Ms. Guta mentioned this very, very eloquently, that this also presents an opportunity for Europe to be producing, especially some of these synthetic fuels. And a lot of these synthetic fuels, hydrogen specifically, but the rest as well, in order to be labeled as green, they need to be produced by renewable energy. And guess what Greece has a lot of? Greece has 57% renewable energy last year. So again, and if you think that Piraeus is the 7th largest port in Europe, so a lot of the traffic comes through here anyways. We have the renewable energy to be producing a lot of these fuels locally. And I think in the long run, already Greece is benefiting from the energy transition. We have a goal, the minister was here, she could testify to this. We have a goal of becoming a regional energy hub. Shipping can and probably should be part of this goal of being this energy hub. And last, but definitely not least, nuclear energy. So I speak to a lot of people in the shipping industry, and particularly their technical departments, and there seems to be broad consensus that in the long run, decarbonization in shipping will most likely be through nuclear energy. And I know this sounds a bit unconventional, but in practice, right now, there are 160 vessels around the world that operate more than 200 small modular reactors. These are small-scale nuclear reactors that can fit into a ship. Primarily, majority of these are in military ships, either submarines or or aircraft carriers. There are some icebreakers, but the technology exists, the technology is proven, and the technology is in our seas, and it's in the Mediterranean because the Americans have aircraft carriers that have nuclear power reactors that are in Crete and below. So we are all exposed to this. We all know how they work. The main challenge to making that technology commercial is the lack of a regulatory framework. What does that mean? That means that if we were to go down this path, if the shipping world were to go down this path, what they would need is the right regulatory framework to be able to call on different ports, given that they have a nuclear reactor on board. But I still, again, going back to my Greek point, I do think that this presents an opportunity for the country. If we were to go down this path, you're opening up your doors and saying we accept this technology. You can also create a movement in commercial shipping as well to adopt this technology. Nuclear energy also has two more uses that's relevant to shipping. The first one is green fuel production. So as I referenced before, a lot of these synthetic fuels like hydrogen, ammonia, and methanol need to be produced with some sort of green energy. Nuclear is green, so 1 + 2 = 3. And lastly, I think we've talked about cold ironing and shore power as well, which is a requirement for EU starting next year, actually. And the requirement right now is that shore power exists over the long run. Obviously, this power also needs to be green. And one of the challenges with renewable energy is, of course, their intermittency. And you can't run ships on intermittent power, and batteries are not there yet. So there is a potential solution of using nuclear energy as a form of powering ships while they're docked. This can either be done by having a nuclear reactor on shore, or there are other technologies like barges that run nuclear reactors for shore power, or floating nuclear reactors that can also be used as that. I know that a lot of the things that I said are slightly different from what the panel has mentioned. That was my intent, because I knew that there would be a lot of amazing people before me that would have covered the basis. But I do think that, as the world changes and goes through this green transition, Greece is very well positioned to take advantage of it, and it's already doing that with renewables. Pair that with the fact that Greeks own 20% of the global shipping fleet, I think there is a massive opportunity that if we were to take advantage of, it could change the dynamics of the country over the next 20 to 30 years. Thank you.
Thank you. In agreement with your last phrase, I would say that you are challenging the discussion here, not provoking. However, green fuels for shipping are green and are towards sustainability. That's why we have the institute you are seeking for research and innovation exists in Greece at the National Technical University of Athens. Dr. Tsiourba presented serious efforts, and now in cooperation with the University of Western Attica, the equivalent school for naval engineering. Furthermore, nuclear energy is a point to discuss since it is not a green solution, neither a sustainable solution. And especially in Greece, according at least to the governmental strategies, as you properly said, we are going towards alternative fuels and renewable energy resources. However, this is to discuss. Great.
May I respond?
You will respond. I just pinpoint some very important issues for discussion after all the presentations. We are now going to industry. As Dora Tsurva said, apart from alternative fuels, we need appropriate vessels for this. So I'm very happy to invite Styliani Risaki, President and Chief Executive Officer of Megatechnica SA, because we are having industry to produce vessels in Greece. Thank you, Styliani.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I was invited here today to speak about the environmental concerns and measures in shipping globally and how these affect the shipbuilding and ship repairing industry. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Stella Risaki. I am a naval architect, marine and mechanical engineer, and I have graduated from the National Technical University of Athens. I have a master's degree from the University of Piraeus in shipping, and I was employed for more than 10 years at the Ministry of Mercantile Marine in General Ships Inspectorate. In 2013, I moved from the public sector to my current position, which is Chief Executive Officer of Megatechnica Slipway. Maritime transport plays and will continue to play a key role in global and European trade and economy. In Europe, its contribution is around 75% of EU external trade volumes and 31% of EU internal trade volumes. Maritime transport is an essential component of Europe's transport system and plays a critical role for the European economy. Greece is a maritime nation by tradition, and the role of Greek ship owners in global shipping is undeniable. Every year, around 400 million passengers embark or disembark in EU ports, including around 14 million on cruise ships. Maritime transport fulfills an important role in safeguarding the connectivity of islands and peripheral maritime regions with the rest of the mainland. Efficient maritime transport connections are essential to the mobility of EU citizens in developing EU regions and to the EU economy as a whole. Driven by the international concern regarding climate change, air and water pollution and greenhouse effect, and the fact that the maritime transport is expected to rise in the following years, led major organizations like the European Union and the International Maritime Organization to undertake early measures in order to prevent the increase in greenhouse gas emissions, air pollutants, and underwater noise. In 2009, the European Union introduced Directive 2009/16/EC, which was amended in 2021 with the regulation of the European Parliament and of the Council on the use of renewable and low-carbon fuels in maritime transport. And the International Maritime Organization adopted the first set of mandatory measures to improve ships' energy efficiency on July 15, 2011, as part of the International Convention for the Prevention of Pollution from Ships, MARPOL. In the next slide, you can see the regulatory timeline for EU and IMO overlap. And in the next slide, the emission-restricted areas, mainly at the coast of USA and Europe. At this point, we have to consider carefully the challenges of today related to decarbonization of shipping, like availability and price of alternative fuels, technology not fully ready in all fronts of the ports, the rules and regulations are partly immature, all alternative fuels occupy more space on board, concerns related to safety, all designs are not future-proof. And last but not least, the cost in terms of time and money that the transition of shipping to the new era and the adaptation to new regulations will require. Shipbuilding industry has an important role in adaptation of ships to new environmental demands by application of new and innovative technologies in existing or new built vessels. Some people would argue that the future of shipping industry is the electric vessel, especially for vessels that operate to short voyages. For example, The modernization of coastal vessels is feasible because the technology is available and proven. The ferry emission is a public responsibility and will bring a boost to the yard and supplier industry. On the other hand, the renewal of tugboat fleet, workboats that will support offshore and fishing industry, and offshore vessels fleet, the industry, both chemical and construction industry, have to adopt, and this is a new challenge. The European Union introduced the framework on state aid to shipbuilding with Official Journal in 2003, which was amended with Official Journal 2011, applicable from January 1st, 2004 until December 31st, 2006 at the least, and set limitations in financing of shipbuilding industry. As a result, many ship owners turn to other markets like Korea, China, Turkey, etc. for building, repairing, or scrapping their fleets, and thus deprive the yards in Europe from potential customers. Lately, European states, finally recognizing the contribution of shipbuilding and ship repairing industry in development, economy, employment, etc., is trying to bring back finance to the shipping industry and support sustainability and innovative technologies. The adaptation of maritime transport to new regulations can be seen as an opportunity for the shipbuilding sector, not only for the bigger yards of the East, but also the medium and smaller yards like those situated in Greece. Our company Megatechnica was founded in 1992 and owns a small shipyard situated at the city of Perama. The shipyard's capacity is to dry dock vessels of approximately up to 105 meters of length overall. The vicinity of the yard with the urban environment makes us very conscious about the impact of our activities at the city. Further to applicable legal measures set by the authorities, we have implemented the international standard ISO 14001, certified by an independent body, and we regularly monitor gas and noise emissions, volatile organic compound emissions, quality of seawater, electric power consumption, freshwater consumption, and waste production. We have invested in green energy since 2012 and have installed solar panels on the roof of our workshops, and we produce green electric power. By adopting smart production solutions like advanced production design and CNC machines, we optimize productions and make wise management of productive means. We specialize in custom-made constructions and designs, and our aim for the future is to invest and upgrade our facilities and improve our productivity. This kind of investment requires large capital expenditure, which involves high risk in investment. We have to note that all investments made by our company until now were made with our own financing and without receiving any state or EU aid. We hope that this will change in the near future. The adaptation of shipping to international environmental demands has to go through innovative practices, alternative fuels and digital solutions, or combination of the above. Shipping decarbonization consists of operational optimization, technical performance and upgrades, and low-carbon fuels. The simultaneous impact and cross-connections should be considered. Also, the challenges should be considered. For example, innovative practices involve the development of new designs. Green transition of the maritime transport takes time, while it is feasible that the reduction of environmental impact to be further reduced by implementing new technologies on ships that use conventional fuels. Instead of waiting the perfect solution, we can make steps forward to sustainability by using tools available today. High-efficiency motors using conventional fuel is a direct and practical solution for reducing of emissions and fuel consumption, without the high cost and limitations due to lack of facilities for alternative fuels. Now is the opportunity for EU and the states to look deeper in shipbuilding industry and the benefits for economy and welfare that can arise from the investment in this field. The state has to find proper financing tools for the Greek yards to step on board the ship of economic growth and at the same time improving the carbon footprint of shipping industry. Thank you. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mrs. Rissaki, for the very clear view about the shipping industry and ship repairing industry. We didn't know up to now that there were financing limitations threatening even the modern shipyards. This is very important for this discussion that will follow. And the part of the very important women we have in the panel, we have here from the sphere of naval engineering 2 important men. The president of the Naval Architects and Marine Mechanical Engineers, Mr. Dimitris Papas, who will take later the floor in the discussion, and Vasilis Vasiliadis, naval architect and marine mechanical engineer from NTUA as well, who is the president of the Pan-Hellenic Association concerning shipyards, arsenals calling the traditional shipyards. He is the ancient Greek transmitted to arsenali in the Latin language, which in the English one took another concept concerning the weapon storage in old shipyards. So we don't use it so much anymore, but I wanted to refer to it. Mr. Vasiliadis will present a convergence between naval cultural heritage and, of course, naval science and engineering, presenting the WEF Athens call to save traditional shipyards. You are having the floor.
Thank you. Good afternoon, distinguished members of the panel, Professor Tonia Moropoulou, ladies and gentlemen. Now we can talk about traditional, something else, but we must have the respect to the cultural heritage. Athens called to save the traditional shipyards with a convergence between cultural heritage and naval science. The Greek shipbuilding and related naval architecture and construction techniques present a unique and uninterrupted journey and experience from the antiquity till today.
If you wish to change.
Sure, thank you. Well, thank you. Here, the first. Well, we can show 4 periods in a history about 10,000 years of shipbuilding. This is something unique because it is going on, it is a live tradition. First period in ancient, for the ancient year, until and Bronze Age, with type of vessels mainly represented by the fresco of a fleet procession from Akrotiri on Aegean island of Thera, also in descriptions in Homer's Odyssey. From this period, Greeks made the tradition to have the biggest fleet all over the world. And with many innovate, the first period, keel in the bottom of the main structure, the sails, and the oar lock. Second period, in classical years and Hellenistic years, types of vessels mainly represented by the triremes, a total warship, the first in the history, only for war, and for commercial purpose, they have ships like the ship of Kyrenia, and the unique is that 1,000 ships like the shipwreck of Kyrenia are sails in archipelagos until today, with the traditional type of trechadiri. Third period, in Byzantine years, we have the war vessel Dromon, as an evaluation of the ancient triremes. Fourth period, the following years, up to 19th century, were wooden ships prevail in Mediterranean and in the new continents as a war, exploration, fishing and commercial transport ships, arising from Karavoskaro, with sails type schooner. A decisive turning point in shipbuilding during the industrial age is still exploring the Greek shipbuilding art. The need for wooden vessels, mainly for fishery, tourism, professional tourism, and modern sailing for pleasure ships, requires the fusion between traditional shipbuilding and modern naval engineering. In this direction, the scientific documentation of traditional shipbuilding is required with the employment of modern line art techniques for 3D documentation and representation. Modern naval architecture provides the ship's lines plan. Fusion between traditional shipbuilding and modern naval engineering. This advanced documentation permits the estimation of ship resistance with modern computational methods, finite elements modeling. Traditional shipbuilding, when combined with modern naval science, which can provide ship's lines plan and materials engineering, which can optimize materials interventions and maintenance, can become modernized, reproducible, and sustainable, giving traditional shipyards the opportunity to exploit the shipbuilding tradition commercially and productively. So, Athens called to save the traditional shipyards. However, the manufacturing activities of traditional shipyards are not only limited to the production of the wooden ships needed today for fishing, sailing, and new touristic uses, but also for the industrial activity of ship repair, which is very intense in the Eastern Mediterranean with emphasis on Greece. In Greece, 300 traditional shipyards were developed and functioned the last 200 years. From this, only 60 to 70 survive till today, even though the demand of industrial activities is augmenting. Institutional challenges, such as the licensing of land use in the seashore, short-term contracts, and high prices are dramatically testing the viability of traditional shipyards all around Greece and mainly in the archipelagos of Aegean. Traditional shipyards, which were proved resilient through the centuries and under threats like environmental stresses, wars, and enemy attacks, are today deteriorating. At this conference, which addressed the need to transition to a green shipping industry, in addition to the innovative practices that need to be adopted, we point out that a key factor in the global movement towards sustainability is a revival of the traditional shipyards and the convergence of traditional shipbuilding and naval engineering, leading to the wooden ships that Aegean, Mediterranean, and the world need. Here from WEF, the Athens call to save the traditional shipyards, address not only environmental concerns, but also positions the traditional ship repair industry as a key factor for sustainability and responsible tourism, sailing, fishing, and trade practices. Thank you.
So that was the other side of naval civilization. That means the traditional one. And when we are speaking of green marine industry, we need to revive the traditional industry and to maintain it. I think we can pass to the discussion issues. And the first issue was the position of the panel and of the SAL concerning what green fuels are. Can we assume that nuclear power is a green fuel concerning the alternative fuels in marine industry? I will start from Faye Selim.
We'll start from the lawyer. Well, nuclear energy, according to my opinion... Oh, okay. Now it's okay? For Europe, nuclear energy, it's a red flag. But the last few years, because we have a delay to the energy transition because of the Russia and the war, they have included in the EU taxonomy regulation small modular reactors, SMRs, eligible to be for financing, for green financing, because they want to help the transactional period, not as green fuels, just as a type of energy that can help the transition. So they are not green. And also, nuclear energy has two major problems. First of all, safety. What is going to happen if we have an earthquake? We saw a few years ago in Japan. What if if there is a war like in Ukraine? In ESPO Convention, we're facing problems like this, and nuclear plants are not safety in these cases. And also the other big problem is the waste. What are we going to do with the waste? Of course, it's very harmful for the environment and for human beings. So under this perspective, nuclear energy, I don't believe that it's green.
Thank you, Faye. We will pass to Stella Risaki.
I have to agree, of course. The matter of safety and the matter of waste is a very, very big issue, and I would have to add the water shortage that France faced during last year, where the nuclear plants were not cooling due to the shortage of water.
Yes.
And this is another issue. So nuclear energy for me, for the waste, is not clear energy. And I will also say that some of the alternative fuels I do not consider green energy.
Like ammonia, for example.
Ammonia.
It's toxic.
Yes, methanol.
Methanol.
To produce methanol, you will have to spend means of water, food, etc. to produce methanol. So we have to have a holistic approach on what is green energy and what is green shipping, and we have to include in this green shipping the industry and the methods of production in this green talk.
Thank you. Before giving the floor to Aphrodite Xidi, who will be the last of the panel to answer to all, I will pass to Dora Tsiurva to ask for her opinion.
Thank you, Professor. Well, the truth is that I am watching many panels concerning the maritime industry in the last 10 years. And in these years, it's only the last year that we hear in public the word nuclear. 2 years ago, it was never on the table, this issue. But the truth is that concerning the technology, we see that there are so many challenges in developing alternative fuels and technologies relating to this. There is a big shortage in hydrogen fuels. We are still back and very far from our targets concerning the 2050, in my opinion, goals. And the nuclear energy, although I think nobody would adopt this option, is now on the table. 1 month ago, it was released the maritime forecast by DNV, which is one of the very important documents we have in the shipping industry. And it was the first time there's a chapter about nuclear. I think, in my opinion, there's a big problem with the public perception. This is what we talk about in the maritime industry, maybe not in public, but on separate small talks around the conferences and the truth is that I'm afraid we will have to look at this because we are back, there's a big delay in the technologies concerning the alternative green fuels. And what is green fuel? I have to agree with Mrs. Risaki, and that green shipping is a difficult word. There's no green shipping actually, and for this we have adopted a new terminology, which is the well-to-wake green and carbon neutral fuels. So I think that inevitably we will have to talk in the recent years about nuclear. Small modular reactors might be a solution, and I hope it will be only a transition period. I would like to ask Aphrodite's point of view with this, which rose there.
I think I very clearly said during the panel that I know that I'm putting ideas out there. So, challenge accepted, and I'm glad that my goal was achieved. Okay, let's start with the definitions. And let's differentiate between land and sea. In Europe, right now, nuclear energy is considered green for land, right? So, and that is true. It's part of the European Green Deal. So on land,
No, it's not.
Yes.
It's included in the EU taxonomy the last 2 years as a transactional fuel, so it's reliable for green financing, but it's not green fuel.
But it
There
is
a difference.
for land though. For land though, if you're talking, so the goal is to decarbonize, right? The goal is to reach to net zero emissions. Nuclear does not produce emissions. So if a country is doing its accounting in terms of how many emissions do you have, and you're producing energy from nuclear, then clearly you're not producing emissions, so you're not contributing to greenhouse gases. So in that way, you are not, you can count the energy produced by nuclear
If you're polluting the environment, you're not sustainable.
But this is different. I'm talking about greenhouse gas, right? This is the goal.
We're talking only about CO2 emissions, but Green Deal, it's not only CO2 emissions.
Yes, but the fact still remains that nuclear can be used for countries' net zero goals.
They are using already nuclear
Yes, and
energy.
it's part of...
France, we have Belgium, we have Bulgaria, we
Germany.
have Czechia also.
And Germany.
And Germany.
Yes, and
Yes.
Romania is putting...
Yes.
And Bulgaria is putting them. So they are part of the energy transition, whether we like it or not. That is true.
We say that it's part of the energy transition.
Yes, so they are considered, it's a non-emitting energy that is currently being used in Europe as a zero-emission energy. So that is true. Now, the taxonomy for maritime, I think I can't argue with that. But we also know that taxonomies change, right? And we also do know that, so taxonomies do change. That's the first thing about the taxonomy. Whether or not it's green, we can argue on the taxonomy, but nonetheless it is zero emissions, so it achieves your goal of zero emissions and reducing emissions. That's the first part. The second element is to what extent will this be adopted by the maritime industry, and I think, you just heard from a person who's more of an expert than I am, that this is being considered. I don't know to what extent it will happen, how quickly it will happen, but it also does have benefits for the shipping industry itself. Because when you are consuming any of the other alternative fuels, your cost increases the more you consume and the faster you go. Alternatively, with nuclear, whether you run the reactor at like a 70% capacity or at a 90% capacity, your cost is practically the same, right? Because you don't, the cost of the fuel isn't a big part of your total cost. So there are other benefits from it. And the ships don't have to stop to refuel like they do right now. So this is also currently happening. And there are a lot of companies that are producing new technologies for nuclear in shipping. And two more points that I'd like to add. The nuclear ships exist. They are inner ships. They are in the Aegean, right? If the American Army has ships in the Mediterranean, there will be nuclear ships around us. There's nothing we can do about it. This is global order, right? So we are currently exposed to it. And the safety element is, I think, something that was also mentioned. It's an element of public perception, right? There are 160 active ships right now. None of them are blowing up. There's 527 nuclear reactors around the world. None of them are blowing up. There was Turkey and Bulgaria are building nuclear power plants at our border with the same earthquake potential, and Turkey recently had a huge earthquake, and they're still fine, right? So I think the extent to which we over-anchor on previous accidents shifts public perception on the topic. I'm not saying that any of this will happen tomorrow. Obviously, there's no way that this will happen tomorrow. There needs a lot of conversation about looking at the facts, particularly with regards to safety. And I think the element of waste, I mean, Demokritos, which is the national lab, they used to run a microreactor. They produced waste right in this country. It stopped working in 2004. It's currently being decommissioned. But the waste was being produced in the country, and there are processes to manage nuclear waste all around the world, right?
Thank you, Mrs. Xede. Mrs. Notias, would you like to intervene at this point, at this topic?
I just want to add value to this panel because I'm in the bunker fuel business for 22 years, where I've been actively selling daily 365 or 20, all the time selling fuel. And
do you have your
So 22 years of actively selling to the Greek ship owners, all the top ones, Tsakos, Martini, Maran tankers, Angelikousi. I always ask them, what are you guys doing, the past few years? One person, Panos Zachariadis, if you know him, he's for nuclear, and so is Hari Petrakakos, who is SNAM, Petrakakos, and you really, Aphrodite really pinpointed it. And I just want to say that fuel will be sold still. I mean, it's low sulfur. It will be sold. And I feel, because I'm part of the International Bunker Industry Association, I'm on their working committee, that we develop, we say our points representing the suppliers and the ship owners, that it's going to take more of a, it's not going to happen right away. I don't think so. Ships, first of all, even methanol, it's storing the methanol, storing the ammonia, crew, just so everybody can know here, the whole processes, crew has to learn. I feel bad for the new crew because they don't even know the old fuel, how they're gonna manage it and handle it. And then every port will have different regulations because there's nothing standard at all, even now. And penalties and whatnot. So it's a little bit of a chaotic situation. But I must say one thing, the ship owners and the bunker industry itself is up to par. It's standing there and moving forward with it. It's not stagnant. That's all. I don't have anything else to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Notias.
I just want to say so that I'm not misconstrued. I'm not saying that this is going to happen tomorrow, but we're talking about 2050 goals, right? This is 25 years away, and we have to be planning 50 years away because we don't have the technologies that we need right now. So everyone is trying to figure out what are going to be the different pieces of the puzzle that are going to let us decarbonize.
As you said, it's one piece of the puzzle.
Yes, exactly.
It's one piece of the puzzle, but we are discussing about the necessity and the feasibility of this piece of the puzzle, because the reason we are speaking of decarbonation is not because it is given, yes, we have to go to decarbonation. We are going to decarbonation because there is a major threatening, and climate crisis is following the fact that CO2 emissions, carbon dioxide emissions, developed an unviable situation for the planet Earth. So that's the reason for decarbonation. Excuse me, I want to make my position. The reason that we are searching for alternative fuels doesn't mean that we will use any alternative fuel for decarbonation. We will use alternative fuels for decarbonation that are having consequences that are less threatening than decarbonation, the sustainability of the life on this planet. So that is the reason for this discussion. That is the reason that we do not consider nuclear energy as a neutral issue. It's not a neutral issue. There are no neutral issues in technology. And there are no objective necessities to accept whatever technology. So it's important to discuss about the holistic consequences of what we are trying to, excuse me. can you please close this? On what we are trying to plan in order to have a future. So there are many opinions expressed here, and that's what we are having to do, to express all possible opinions. Mrs. Notias wanted once again the floor.
Απλώς έλεγα για το carbon tax. Εγώ, επειδή I follow the crude market such a long time, and when I first began selling fuel in 1998, you'd give a price to an owner or his captain, his buyer, and it would last for 3-4 days. By 2004, because of the derivative markets, which actually ruined the whole economy of the whole world and America, and I think that's what's going on more than what we think is going on now, is that we were giving prices and the price lasts only 10 minutes. Only now, it becomes stock market. I avoided working for Wall Street, and here I am thinking that I'm in a safer place. The carbon tax is a big issue, because you know that it changes. It's not a steady price that an owner has to pay, which would make it easier. He could have a budget. No, it's just like the crude, it's like the fuel. I sell fuel 1,000 tons at $520, and then 1 minute later it could go to $580 because of news that went out. And the algorithms will direct and redirect. So this is something that none of us really think about or know about, and we can't because we're too busy trying to figure out which fuel we're going to use and which green. But behind the scenes, this is what's really happening, how they can make money. The European Commission, America, all of them, the derivatives are the root of all evil. And if you ever want to check it out, Bosley Bourne, who was the first lawyer in America who Clinton put on the stock exchange to be the commissioner. He asked her back then in the early 90s, what is this derivative market? She did her research, and she comes back to him, and she said, she says it's the ruin of the American economy, possibly the world economy. 10 years later, she comes to justice with that because Alan Greenspan told her to shut up, not to say anything. And she talked about this. You know about this, Aphrodite, because you're smiling. I don't know. And this is why lots of countries defaulted, because they played the oil markets with the taxpayers' money, with money markets, all that. So anyway, these are things that nobody talks about because we're too busy talking about what fuel we're going to use in 2050, if we're living then. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mrs. Yorba.
I would like to add something. First of all, I'm not a naval engineer. I'm a chemical engineer. My professor is Professor Moropoulou, and I'm honored to consider her my mentor. I think I would never be able to stand in a panel and talk if I hadn't been a few years with her. This is one story. The other is that if you're a chemical engineer and you start working in the naval engineering department, then you understand that for naval engineers, the crew, the safety of the crew is something very important, which is not very obvious for the public. So the safety issue concerning the nuclear is very important to the ship owners. The crew is their family, and they have to ensure that the family is safe. This is what I wanted to talk because you mentioned before. The first one is this. The other one is that working on the research for alternative fuels and the green transition for maritime industry, I can assure you that there is no silver bullet on the table for the alternative fuels and technologies. We believe actually that in the future we will have different solutions. It's not going to be only the hydrogen or only ammonia or only methanol, or we're going to have a variety of different alternative fuels for different reasons, for different applications, for different uses, for different ships. In the Northern Europe, for example, they are working a lot on battery ships because they have short distance ships routing, and so they can work on this. In Greece, for example, we could work on onshore power systems concerning the island and creating infrastructures on port, where, so we can give power with cold iron, etc. So we think that there's not going to be only one fuel in the... Yes, of course. We already have some methanol ships, and some also there. I mentioned before that we have orders on ammonia, although we have the issue of ammonia slip. We know it's toxic, and there are so many issues we have to face. There's not going to be just one solution. We will have a variety of different solutions, so we have to live with it. It's not going to be one way towards the decarbonization. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to ask the President of the Naval Architects and Marine Mechanical Engineers, Mr. Papas, for his intervention and to close this panel.
I must thank all the panel about this presentation. Special thanks to Mrs. Xidi about the other option that he gave us, because I think that I feel now that I'm a Poland in the whole earth, not like peace, like a citizen of this country, but like a part of full national. This is another option. I have never think about that. Thank you very much. From the other side, I think that we talk about the decarbonization only with market rules, and this is not correct. I think we must thinking with another option for the future of the planet, and it's very difficult at this time for funds and companies to invest about alternative fuels or nuclear energy or everything else. And all the governments and all the nationals must give help to scientists to check for another solution of this problem. Thank you, Mrs. Moropoulou.
Thank you, Mr. Papas. I think we can conclude. I would like to thank you all about this very vivid discussion and very rich one. All the women panelists, the president of the Greek Naval Engineers, the president of the Pan-Hellenic Shipyards Association, thank you for entrusting to WEF the call to safeguard the traditional shipyards, because this is a chapter to open these days with very big ship owners as well, who are supporting this effort because it has a national meaning as well. I believe that by closing this session, we have to go far beyond what we had in our imagination, our conception about shipbuilding, about industry, about maintenance, and we have to be coordinated, because whatever happens concerning shipping capital, it concerns the national entity of Greece and its major role on the globe as the first power on the globe concerning ship ownership. So thank you very much. We will have to do a lot more. Thank you.
Well, it has been a very long day, but I think we heard so many things from people that actually coming from this particular field of study, women essentially. trying to give us all their expertise, their own insight. So as we draw the day to a close, I would like to extend my deepest appreciation to all our speakers, panelists, the organizers, Professor Moropoulou, Tonia Moropoulou, and all the other people that actually have been trying to organize this and putting it together. But let me just say this. We will actually be here tomorrow morning for the second day of the Women's Economic Forum, and I hope that we will be more than enough to fill up this room. So I would like to thank you very much for being here today until this very late moment. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
Questo è